The SR-71 Blackbird was a Cold War marvel, capable of cruising at over 2,300 miles an hour and at altitudes above 85,000 feet. It could photograph enormous tracts of land with incredible precision, all while flying too high and too fast to ever be shot down. With the majority of its missions declassified, we now know that from 1966 until its retirement in 1998, it flew over 3,500 reconnaissance missions, all of which were conducted over foreign soil, with just one notable exception, when it was sent to look for the hijacker known as D.B. Cooper.
We don't know who he was, where he came from, or where he went.
In the immediate aftermath of the D.B. Cooper hijacking of November 24, 1971, the U.S. government launched one of its most extensive manhunts in history. The manhunt was focused on Clark County, Washington, just outside Portland. This was where the FBI believed that the hijacker had parachuted out of the airliner along with his $200,000 ransom. Dozens of aircraft, including small planes, jets, and helicopters from both the civilian and military sectors, assisted in the manhunt. Covering hundreds of square miles, these pilots and their crews strained their eyes looking down for any sign of the hijacker. They were hoping to see a parachute caught in a tree, or perhaps even a human body splattered in a field. Whenever they thought they had spotted something, FBI agents on the ground were dispatched to those locations with all haste. Unfortunately, these supposed parachutes always turned out to be bed sheets lying in a field, inadvertently freed from clotheslines, or sometimes these were tarps covering firewood that a high wind had taken hold of and launched into the tops of trees. In one instance, the crew of a helicopter were certain they had spotted the hijacker's parachute lying alongside Lake Merwin. When they swooped down for a closer inspection, several boys emerged from underneath a white tarp holding their fishing poles, staring wide-eyed up at the chopper hovering overhead. One issue that the FBI ran into while using all of these aircraft was just how much they cost to operate, especially the ones on loan from the military, like 2 National Guard Kiowas that showed up to assist in search efforts 2 days after the hijacking. Not long after these helicopters arrived from nearby Fort Lewis, the FBI learned that the Pentagon was charging them $250 per chopper per hour. In today's dollars, that was going to amount to around $35,000 a day. J. Edgar Hoover's FBI were notoriously frugal and institutionally resistant to excessive spending. As a result, the FBI very quickly pulled the plug on the Kiowas and sent them back to Fort Lewis. For the rest of the manhunt, they resorted to using civilian helicopters, which were considerably cheaper to rent. Despite extensive searching from the air and also on the ground, the search was called off after a week, and scores of FBI agents returned to their desk jobs. But one agent in the Sacramento, California FBI office wasn't giving up so easily. This was Special Agent Ron Stamp, head of the FBI's Security and Espionage Task Force in California. With the Sacramento area being home to half a dozen military bases at the height of the Cold War, Stamp's experience in matters of espionage had allowed him to cultivate numerous military contacts throughout these installations. Just north of Sacramento sat Beale Air Force Base, home to the SR-71 Blackbird fleet, and Stamp decided to call in a favor. He asked if the Air Force might allow the Blackbird to fly over the flight path of the hijacked airliner and scan for any items that the hijacker might have tossed out of the plane. No doubt to Stamp's enormous surprise, the Air Force actually agreed to do it. But if the cost of 2 National Guard helicopters was outside the Bureau's budget, how could they possibly afford to buy time with the most sophisticated aircraft that the world had yet produced? Well, no doubt to Stamp's even bigger surprise, the Air Force offered to provide the SR-71's assistance totally free of charge. The Blackbird's primary mission was to locate Cooper's briefcase that he used during the hijacking. The FBI firmly believed that Cooper tossed it out the back of the plane at some point between when they took off from Seattle and when he jumped out over Clark County, Washington. Unlike a parachute that could have drifted for miles in any direction, this briefcase would have fallen straight down below the aircraft. So by confining the focus of the Blackbird's cameras to a narrow half-mile wide strip beneath the flight path, it was hoped that this restriction would increase the odds of capturing the briefcase on one of the Blackbird's highly sensitive cameras. Also, since this corridor needing to be searched was only 87 miles in length, this would allow for multiple passes over the flight path. However, scheduling a Blackbird flight over domestic airspace was no easy task and required significant advanced planning. Each flight required at least a week of advance warning due to a myriad of issues, such as having to account for the sonic booms the aircraft would create over populated areas, the specialized computer programming within the aircraft, having to file a flight plan with civilian authorities, and needing to comply with a host of other FAA requirements. But as dramatic as it sounds to have the world's greatest spy plane search for D.B. Cooper, the end result was anticlimactic. In January and February 1972, the Blackbird took to the air on 5 separate occasions, attempting to fly over the flight path. Each mission ended with the Blackbird returning to base with no photographs taken. Anyone familiar with the weather in the Pacific Northwest will know where this is headed. Flying at an altitude of 80,000 feet, cloud cover completely obstructed their view of the ground during all 5 flights. Finally, after their 5th attempt, the Air Force politely informed the FBI that they would not be able to accommodate any more attempts to survey the area because they were needed elsewhere for military missions. Thus ended the SR-71's only known operational mission over American soil. Indeed, the world's most advanced aircraft was defeated by clouds, and still to this day, who D.B. Cooper really was remains a mystery. Well, folks, that's all I've got for today, so like and subscribe and all that YouTubey stuff, and I will talk to y'all again soon.